Yeah.
Well, I think there's at least a couple things in 2030, like the pushing a lot more for BA MAs. That's definitely a better bang for the buck proposition if you can do a master's in 5 years instead of 6, and trying to use the campus facilities more effectively in the summers, having like a full semester in the summer. That's another way to push towards being more cost effective.
I don't think the impact of the latter financially is likely to be large, and it's also the case that there's not been a lot of enthusiasm for the faculty for doing that, actually.
And since when has the lack of enthusiasm on the faculty's part affected the upcoming fees?
Oh, absolutely all the time. Absolutely all the time it affects what's going on. But on the first one, for some people, that change represents a small saving, right? But I don't know what the fraction is. Let's say even 50% of people actually want to get a master's degree and want to do it sort of right after undergrad school. I don't think the number actually is that high, but maybe it is. But even so, if you say, okay, so that's a small saving. Notice that their total outlay is actually greater, right? It's less relative to what it would have been before, but it's still greater than just finishing in 4 years. And so it's hard to represent that, again, as something that really stands up against a 427% increase.
So another thing I've seen a lot of undergraduates do is exactly what you said. They spend the first 2 years at Front Range Community College, and then they transfer here.
Yeah.
And that's a huge cost saving.
For them.
Especially if what you have in goal is a BA/MA, then you end up doing that sort of at the high price for 3 years instead of 5 or 6. But if we could facilitate that. We could make it easier to transfer courses. We could, make a better pipeline for students who want to do that.
That's true. Donna?
Well, I would argue that we need to take a much broader view in terms of how the culture in our world is changing. So, for instance, right now, most working people find that they are out of date within 10 years of getting some formal degree in their working world. So one of the futuristic models that would drive costs down is to not think in terms of these finite degree programs, a BA, an MA, a PhD. Not that you wouldn't have those milestones, but the idea would be that institutions compete for our loyalty. We sign up for a lifetime membership of continuous learning opportunities, now made available through all the technology advances, the social networking, the distance learning opportunities. So the cost of educating somebody between the ages of 18 and 22 is driven down because now you have 50-year-olds who occasionally take classes to stay current in their field. And the institutions are now designed around assessing that, providing credentials for it, and building customer loyalty. So you want to go to that institution for that lifelong learning. So it's taking a broader view.
Jim and then Gary.
So I don't hope this doesn't come across as too cynical, but cultures do evolve institutions and mechanisms that are designed to keep large portions of the population off the street. And we're going through a period of relatively high unemployment right now, and there's good betting that it's not going to change and may only get worse into the indefinite future. What if universities were evolved for the express purpose of keeping 18 to 22-year-olds off the street and out of the job market? If that's the case, and you can make the argument that as adolescence goes out into 25 or 26-year-olds, we're changing the laws so that kids can stay on their parents' insurance until 49. You can account for why people are in PhD programs in the humanities. It may not matter what we do if the larger ecological system is designed to give people a reason for being and not working.
Well, so the question is, let's suppose we agree that people would like that. Where does the money to fund that come from?
That's a separate question, but
no, it's not.
A lot of your let me ask you another question for you. So most of this analysis is fairly U.S. centric.
Yes.
And if you look at the European system, particularly on the continent, the cost of the students is virtually zero. They're keeping themselves fed. Even that, not so much.
Right.
The unemployment rate is quite a bit higher.
Yeah.
So the money is coming from the fact that the government has simply absorbed the cost.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So,
So do you see the likelihood of that happening here?
well, how much of that 400% increase is actually being shouldered in the end by the actual consumer, and how much of it is being shouldered in the end by governments combined, federal and state?
A good question, and I have to look back at those particular numbers. So maybe some share of it is. I venture it's a declining share, but I don't really know that. So notice that there was this big shift from aid to loans, right? And I think I had something which I didn't refer to on one of the charts there. So actually, there's another thing that people might find it interesting to read. There are quite a few analyses online of sort of a financial analysis of the benefits of college. Okay? And the good news for us is that virtually all of them will tell you that college is a good deal, right? Less good news is that it doesn't look like the economics in a good many of them is really any good. And one of the things that they don't tend to do is to consider the cost of borrowing as part of that. Although that's another thing, that's a way in which the economic downturn has helped, right? Because interest rates are much lower, and so those carrying costs are less. But yeah, so I mean, but actually, if we're going to talk about sort of government playing more of a role here, I mean, there are lots of other arguments that could be made, right? But we have to accept, I think, particularly here, given what our history is, that for whatever reason, people don't really seem to be buying that, right? So there was a time in California where they didn't charge tuition and they didn't call everything a fee, right? I mean, so it really did cost very little to go to college, and the same was true in many other states. But people just aren't seemingly willing to view education in that light anymore.